Welcome to the Marketing Stack podcast. And in today's episode, I'm talking to Andy Cabasso, who has actually a very, very fascinating story. And we'll get into that a little bit. But he's the founder of Postaga. Postaga
Yep.
was launched on Product Hunt about 10 or 11 months ago. And also very interesting concept, very interesting idea. And we'll get into that in the episode. Andrew, thank you so much for joining me for the podcast. Obviously, you reached out to me, and so I will go into the psychology and the reason for that in the episode. But welcome, and great to have you here.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for having me here.
So, Andy, do I call you Andy or
Andy's
Andrew?
good.
Andy,
So,
okay, cool.
so on my LinkedIn profile, I say Andrew because I think that sounds maybe a bit more professional, but everyone calls me Andy for the most part.
Cool. So, Andy, you're actually a lawyer. Well, you're qualified as a lawyer.
I
Then
I am a lawyer. I don't actively practice, but yes.
and then you went into sort of marketing, and then you launched this product. So tell me, where did your journey start? Like, how does this all happen?
That's a great question. I don't know how it all happens, but we're here, aren't we? So, as a student, I studied marketing and entrepreneurship, and I always kind of wanted to start my own business someday. And I had started several like small businesses that didn't end up going anywhere. And after university, I went to law school thinking I'd go down the path of being a lawyer. But turned out I really wasn't particular. Like, I learned that I was not necessarily cut out for it. I wasn't excited about it. But at the same time, I was applying to work at different law firms to just as it kind of it was. And I was realizing that all of the law firms that I was applying to work at had very bad websites. And it was the norm more than anything else that every law firm I was applying to had a bad website. So a friend of mine who was my roommate in college and university, he was a freelance web designer, and we kind of started talking, and I was thinking, there is this market here. There are a lot of lawyers without a web presence or with a bad web presence, and we could fix that. You do web design, and I can speak legalese and speak lawyer language. And this kind of, it started out as like a side project of doing web design specifically for the legal industry, and it kind of took off. And it started out as a side project, side hustle, ended up becoming a growing full-time business that eventually got acquired by much larger company in the legal space.
Yeah, I believe you sold that company for what was reported as over seven figures. So that's a major achievement. And I love that you identified your strengths and I don't want to call them weaknesses, but just the things that made you bored, I guess, which was the legal side of just being a lawyer or whatever.
It wasn't for me. I like, in hindsight, I wish I could have learned that sooner because it was, yeah, an expensive lesson. But yeah, yeah, I kind of found my path.
But then it became a profitable lesson too, because like the byproduct of the
Yeah.
research and being in contact with or being close to, through the studies.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people, like what happened with me is I was bored in the first year of university, but I ended up finishing my degree anyway, just out of necessity of just having the thing. Became an entrepreneur after that, but I think the same as you, it was like, well, I have to finish this thing. I've committed to it. I've
Yeah.
paid my dues. I paid my fee. Like I've got my debt, or whatever the case may be. So
Right.
might as well get it done. Very cool. And
Yeah.
so the fascination around digital, like, lawyers work mostly offline. They don't necessarily have, like you said, a web presence. What's been so how long have you been doing this work now?
Since I guess I started kind of in and at the tail end of my experience in law school, so since about 2012 or so. So yeah, 9 years or so professionally in it at least. And one thing I guess it took me a while to learn, but was that There were some lawyers that I was speaking with that even though they had no web presence, they kind of like what you were saying, they dealt very much offline, and their customers were coming from referrals and word of mouth. They didn't see any urgent need to have a web presence, and so I had to kind of calibrate for that, because when I come across a prospective customer and I see that they have no or minimal web presence, to me that is heartbreaking and shocking. But for them, sometimes it's, well, I don't see the need for it yet. Then again, like sometimes often what I found was when I would reach out about this, they would say, yeah, even though like I get a lot of my business from word of mouth, still I'm finding and I'm learning that all of my prospective customers look me up online. And so it turns out I do need a website. I need a very minimal polished web presence because my website is my business's online business card. And so they need to check up on me, because if you're a lawyer, like someone's going to pay me thousands of dollars or decide whether they're going to hire me over another law firm in this practice area, they need to know that they can trust me. And one easy differentiator is having a polished website. And especially if it's going to be, you're dealing with clients which are giving you thousands of dollars, it's should be a no-brainer in terms of this being a worthwhile investment.
Yeah, and I see that in a lot of different niches as well. It's
Right.
At the moment I'm working with a lot of functional medicine on naturopathic doctors and private practice owners, and they have a very similar, I wouldn't say attitude. It's like they know they need it, but they're always
Oh,
blaming time.
yeah, but that's where you come in, because you can save them time.
Right.
Actually, an early experiment of mine that went wrong. It went wrong, but it was a failed experiment, and we learned from it. An early iteration of my business, we were trying to make a self-service platform for building a website for law firms, and we launched it, and no one was taking us up on it. And we asked for the people who like tried it out and asked for feedback, and they said, listen, I'm charging hundreds of dollars per hour to clients, and my time, I know what my time is worth, and I know what my skill set is. I'm not a web designer, and even if you give me beautiful templates and things like that, I still need to populate the website and figure it all out. And even if it's going to take me 5 hours or even a couple of hours, this isn't a skill set that I have today, and it's going to take me time. So I would rather pay someone else with experience to give me a good product. And so, yeah, whenever I hear people say like, well, I don't have the time, well, as a web agency, hopefully you can make the process very much easier for them. Typically, like what my process was as an agency was, I want to make this as hands-off for you as possible. And so if you're providing professional services, I want to, like, for us, a big bottleneck was getting content, just information about the practice, biography information, and stuff like that. So we would roll into our packages content writing. So all we would need from the client would be something like headshots, and we'd have an initial kickoff conversation where we'd ask them questions and get information from them, any login or any information that we needed from them. And then from there, we can go do our work and come back to them with a ready to go website that meets their specifications. Because yeah, if you need materials from your client, like I had a lot of clients where even like getting a headshot was a big hurdle, because they said, all right, I know I need new headshots, this is on my to-do list. Months pass. I had clients that owed me a headshot for several years, plural.
Wow.
And we would regularly follow up with them and say, hey, can we just get a headshot, or even not a placeholder, but we'll put something else on the website for now, and later you can get it to us. But yeah, the easier you can make it for your clients, the better.
Yeah. So it's funny though, because they say that when you solve one problem, you open up a bunch of other problems.
Yeah.
Right. And so with having now this fancy website, or this website that's at least functional and that's credible and that's putting you on the map from an SEO point of view, and we'll cover some of this a little bit later as well, the need for constant maintenance and production of content then becomes the challenge. And in today's world, video. So
Yeah,
talk about
absolutely.
that a little bit.
Yeah, so from the customer, and it depends if you're like an agency serving the customers, or you are the customer and you are going, or you're the person managing your business's website. Yeah, so once you have the website, it can, like, sometimes a misconception that, okay, our website is live, therefore we should immediately start ranking in Google and everything like that. But that doesn't necessarily happen, especially if you're in a competitive industry and a competitive location. And so, like, well, we saw with lawyers, for example, it would vary very much by the practice. So whether you're, like, for example, the most competitive practice areas were personal injury in the United States, because that's just the big money making area. If you get into a car accident or something like that, the amount of money that you may end up winning in a settlement or a court case could be a lot of money for you as well as the law firm. And so the law firm is going to recognize there's a lot of potential money on the table here. So they put a lot of investment into SEO. And so for any business to show up well in Google, it's important to recognize that for you to show up on the first page of Google, the number 10 spot, the very bottom of the page, you are going to have to displace someone else. And so it is competitive. And so if you knock someone off the first page of Google, then they're going to probably recognize that very quickly. They've already put investment into it to get to that first page of Google. And if you can somehow knock them off the first page, they are going to do what they can to fight their way back onto the first page. And so if you launch a website today, you are playing catch up with the people who are already on the first page of Google in your industry and in your location if you're a local business. So there is effort and investment that needs to put into getting you there. And I think it's something that not necessarily a lot of people are thinking about when they launch their website. They're thinking, all right, great, I launched my website, now I should show up in my city for my business type.
And what does that mean? So that means constant production of content, blog posts.
So yeah, there are different
effort.
The effort, yeah. So it's everything from, producing quality content to doing link building to get other websites to link to your content. Since there are many hundreds of mysterious, quote unquote, ranking factors that affect whether your website shows up on the first page of Google. One that we've seen in studies that at least correlates very highly with better position in Google is the number and quality of links to your website and to your content. And producing great content can help your website rank, but also getting other websites to link to your content can have a big impact as well.
Mm-hmm. And so that actually leads me into this question, which, so you're obviously, I mentioned early in the introduction that you reached out to me for the interview for the podcast, which would invariably give you a link on my website or on my podcast.
That's right.
Back to, sorry, I keep saying that wrong, or maybe to your personal blog, wherever you want to link to. So there's effort required, right? So tell me the strategy or educate me on how this whole process works.
Yeah. So happy to talk more about that. So like for me and my brand, for example, part of what my strategy involves is basically finding relevant websites, businesses, blogs, podcasts that I think would be a good fit for either promoting my blog content or promoting content that I can give over a podcast or something like that. In full transparency, with the end goal of getting a link back to my website and my brand. Sometimes there's conflation of a few different terms like link building as well as like digital PR. But for me, it's all under the same kind of umbrella because it's a similar workflow no matter what, which is we're going to start from the position of we want a bigger audience. And so whether it's reaching out to websites to share with them our blog articles to see if they can link to them, or to reach out to blogs to see if they can review our product, which will get us, I guess it's press, but it's also getting that backlink. or to reaching out to a podcast to talk about something related to our area of expertise and then get a link. It's all under that same umbrella. And so like what my workflow looks like is I have kind of different strategies in different areas that I'm going after depending on what my goals are. So for doing podcast promotion, for example, I I'll search for podcasts in my area of expertise, so marketing, agencies, and things like that, or business operations, and I'll find podcasts. I'll then find the email addresses for the contact people at the podcast, and it's important if you can find an email for the right person. It better ensures that you get a response as opposed to finding a generic email like a contact at or an info at, and then having a good pitch, because so many emails that I get and that I see in the space are just so bland that it's just not compelling. I've been on the receiving end of a lot of pitches, everything from, like content, and I'm sure that you've probably seen them too. Like, yeah. It's like something like, hey, I came across your article. I wanted to let you know that I wrote an article that is similar and relevant to your topic. It would be great if you could link to my article in your article. Well, I'm glad that you would get some benefit out of it, but what's the benefit for me? Right. And so when I reach out to podcasters or anyone, I'm very mindful of that they may not know who I am. It'd be great if they did, but I want to focus on what is the benefit that their podcast is going to get and their audience is going to get. And so I'm sharing with you my pitch now. It's, hey, I came across your podcast and I have a few episodes queued up and I'm excited about it. I wanted to reach out and see if you're accepting any new guests in the next month or so. I have a few ideas for topics that would be relevant to your audience, and then list the specific ideas that you have that are unique to your area of expertise, but also very relevant to that podcast audience. And so, making sure that like if you're reaching out to a podcast about marketing, that your topics are marketing related, or if you're reaching out to a podcast that's all about agencies, that it's agency related, because just giving an irrelevant pitch, like hopefully you've gotten that email opened, and if they see the pitch and they're like, okay, they don't know anything about our podcast, you blew it. Yeah,
you only get one chance.
And then beyond that, I'll try and give a little bit of credentials, like a bit about me and why I'd be a good fit. Here's my relevant experience. And like brag a little bit, but make it enticing. So like I sold a marketing agency, and here and like the bullet points that I have are relevant to my talk topic. So if I'm pitching how to grow and sell an agency, in my parts where I'm mentioning I sold an agency, so I have relevant experience here. One other thing that I think is also important is I mention in my pitches also I have an audience of people, of digital marketers, or an email list as well, and I'd be happy to share the episode with them. I also see in some pitches, if you are like, a lot of podcasters go on other people's podcasts, and so in the pitch they'll say, I'd also have my own podcast and I'd be happy to have you on as well. Offering something reciprocal of value to the person that you're reaching out to is also a big win, and makes them more likely to want you on their podcast, because you're not just in it for you, and you're not just in it for the exposure that you're going to get, but you want to help them and their audience as well. And that gets a much better response. And so, with all of my outreach pitches, I try and be mindful of that, about this person that I'm reaching out to has no idea who I am, and I'm reaching out to them because I want something, but what can I provide for them? What is the benefit that they're going to get? And so if I'm like pitching them to get them to link to a piece of content of mine, I want to show why, like, what benefit their audience will get from this. Like, so I saw that you linked to this article, but that article is from 2015 and it's outdated. This article that I have is from 2021. It shares all this stuff. Oh, and also, by the way, if you're interested, we do have an affiliate program if that's a benefit to you. So let me know about that. So that's kind of an approach I like to take.
Yeah, it's interesting because I have seen a number of emails that come through, and it's kind of nuts because sometimes, they'll send you one email and they're clearly using a CRM with some sort of automation or whatever. and it's like 2 or 3 days later, almost on the minute, it's like,
Yep.
hey, I didn't hear back from you. Can we get in touch, or whatever? And it's just a little bit mindless, in
So
my opinion.
but there are some like pitches that stand out to you, and so I'm like I'm curious now. Like, well, so in general, like, what to you stands out as particularly good or particularly bad?
For me, it's easy to spot that the person just doesn't know who you are, right? So it's like they'll put my company name in there, or they'll put my website in the, in the copy, and then
Yeah.
it's like the next sentence clearly doesn't say anything relevant to what they've just written in the line above, so it's clearly a field or something, or they've just
Yeah.
got one line that they need to fill in, and the rest is all just copy paste.
Yeah.
But I sometimes take it a step further. So, sometimes there'll be something that's interesting that comes through, not overly interesting, but it's like, okay, let me have a look. And I'm very curious as well.
Yeah.
I'm just built that way. And so I'll open up links, and I'll go and find the websites, and I'll go find the LinkedIn profiles or the Facebook
Hmm.
profiles or all the things, and make a judgment on my own in terms
Hmm.
of, you know, would this be worthwhile? Or in some case, it's a little bit selfish. It's like, what can I learn from the person
Hmm.
that would also be of benefit to my
Yeah.
audience, and also my clients? Because there's in some instances where I learn something on an episode, which
Yeah.
I then can pass on to my clients, because, hey, this is also an opportunity for us to get free advice.
You're not the first person I've heard that from. Also, a friend of mine, Jimmy Rose, who runs a company called Content Snare, who also has a podcast about agencies. I was on his podcast a while back. I kind of cold pitched him, and he's like, "Yeah, absolutely." And I recommended a friend to him, and he said, "Well, here's what I like. Their experience is interesting, but would they mind if I like basically had them on and asked them to break down my business, because I find that I'm a better interviewer when I'm more invested in the topic, and my audience is going to find it interesting too if we have a real example here. And so, show me your secrets, kind of thing." And that makes for a better interview for sure. And you have like a real practical example. Like, here we're talking about specifically how to reach out to podcasts in an effective way and stuff like that. But yeah,
With the goal of building SEO for a backlink,
yeah,
in that specific question they asked you just now. But it's like, there's also a relationship building. So I've made a few
yeah,
friends through just this process. And I think you and I connected on matchmaker.fm,
yeah,
which is also like a podcast. It's kind of like a matchmaking tool for podcasters
yeah,
and guests. Really fascinating thing. I can't even remember how I found it, but kind of from the first day that I've put my profile up on there, I've had a few people reach out, like yourself and a few others. And again, I think it comes down to, with all of these tools, with all of these apps, whether you're on social or these matchmaking type of services, it comes down to writing a good headline or
yeah,
something that's going to grab somebody's attention. Obviously, the marketing stack has the word marketing on it, so that's probably how
yeah,
you found mine.
yeah.
So I'm glad that little bit of SEO is working for me.
Yeah, I think I like searched for like a marketing category, and you popped up, and I'm like, oh, this is great. This would be a good fit. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, in my case, it's, the podcast is more of a learning exercise, more of a, what Russell Brunson calls a exploratory. He uses a different word, actually. It's more of like the researcher. You
Yeah.
know, you're using other people's time, but also giving benefit of the audience. So I wish I had started my podcast sooner, like years ago.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things where there's still opportunity. And that brings me to my next question. So you've
Yeah.
been doing SEO for a couple of years now, 8 odd years building websites, and now you've got your company where you're also working with it still. What have you seen in terms of the ebbs and flows of SEO? And obviously, there's pandas and hummingbirds and all of these things flying around. But
Yeah.
what have you seen so far?
I mean, the main trend is that it's gotten more difficult. It consistently has gotten more difficult and more competitive. Although, like, I wasn't doing SEO back in the early days, like hear war stories from veterans, veterans of SEO who say things like, yeah, I could just stuff a bunch of keywords in the footer of my website and I would automatically rank. Or I got a WordPress website in 2005 or something like that when they first launched, and WordPress was automatically optimized, and my WordPress site would just shoot to the top of the rankings past any Drupal or Joomla or any other CMS website, and it worked. And I'm just thinking, oh man, that sounds wonderful. And like the same for like appearing in like maps and like local search. It was super easy, but like over time, as there are more entrants into the space and as Google refines its algorithm, it gets more and more competitive, which really means that if you want to rank better, you have to put more effort and potentially investment into that. And so whether it's, better quality content, because it used to be that you could just write a bunch of 500 word articles that are relatively nonsense about a topic, but if you have the right amount of keyword density and you mention the term that you're going after, you could rank for that even if your article was garbage and not helpful to anyone. But now your content and your visibility, you're competing against more and more people, and so you have to be much more thoughtful and methodical about your strategy.
Mm-hmm. And of course, like I think if we did like a history, and we won't go into too much of it, I think part of it is, yes, there's a lot more people publishing content now than there has ever been.
Yeah.
And it will be like that probably forever.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, it's like Google and all these other services, I would say even Facebook, even Pinterest, even all of these other social apps, while they're not all SEO heavy tools, they do rely on some sort of search to function. And so, bringing that around is they've all gotten smarter at creating or giving the user experience a good experience. Because if you're getting shitty articles showing up on the first page and you click on it and you bounce, Google is like, oh, that wasn't good for that person, and so let's change things up. And so while it is more difficult, I'm also happy that it is getting that way, because it cleans out or it filters out a lot of the garbage and nonsense that is also out there.
I agree for most everything except for recipes and cooking. Have you done any searches recently for trying to find a recipe for anything?
I don't cook, so I'm not in that.
Oh man, you have like a cook for you? Like that sounds great.
I live in Thailand. Like we just buy everything.
Oh man, I'm sorry. I'm don't mean to go off tangent, but I'm just, oh yeah, that's right. You live in Thailand. I'm super jealous of you. You have like really amazing food. So, all right, we'll come back to this later maybe, because I have to ask you about Thai food. But all right, so let's say I want to, let's come back to cooking. I'm doing a search for, I want to find a recipe for chicken tikka masala. And invariably the top ranked article that shows up is something that is very optimized in a particular way to satisfy Google. And that's, that's what everyone does, but it's particularly burdensome, I find, with cooking and recipes. So if I click on that article, there is going to be paragraphs of the chef's life story before they even get to the recipe. It's like, all right, here's an article for chicken tikka masala. My grandfather was a plumber and he lost both of his legs. And like it's paragraphs and paragraphs. Like some of them now thankfully have like buttons at the top that say jump to the recipe, and then it goes down 3/4 of the page, follow like in between, which are AdSense blocks and affiliate links and things like that, before you can actually for cooking in particular, all I want is the recipe and maybe some star ratings and user comments so I know some advice about things I might want to change with the recipe. But this particular subject matter, it's 99% terrible just because everyone sees how in this space you need to compete. And I think it's like this little microcosm of what SEO broader used to be like for every industry, because it used to be you could keyword stuff and you had a certain formula that you'd follow and you'd have poor quality content and that would rank high, but it wasn't good for user experience. And somehow today, recipe and cooking blogs have like been competing with very bad user experience.
I would say that's partly true in the marketing or digital marketing space as well. It's like, there's always like, let me tell you this thing before I get into the content. And like, when it comes to blog posts, for me, it's like you said, there's maybe a button where there's a table of contents or something, and then you can click and you can go all the way through, or you just scroll. You just like go to and you see the paragraph you need, you consume what you need, and you leave.
Right.
What's interesting to me is YouTube, on the other hand, when people don't get what they came for in the first 3 to 5 seconds, they leave. And the comparison to the blog is you can go find what you're looking for on the blog, but on a video player, you're not quite sure where that is. And so you just rather leave the video to go find somebody else who's getting into the content quicker.
Yeah. I'm definitely not an expert in YouTube. I'm still very much trying to figure out YouTube, but like there are things that I've read and seen that people do like that have success with it, which is like in the first 3 seconds, say what this video is about and what people are going to learn. And I try to be mindful of that. Like, hey, in this video about link building, I'm going to talk about link building. I'm going to show you strategies so people know what it's going to be in the video. Another thing that I've seen also, like, which works well, I think, is you can, in the description, have timestamps of different things that you cover at different sections, like a table of contents. And I need to do more of that for sure. I'm saying this now, kind of like committing myself to it because I know I don't do it as well as I should.
Yeah, and that does help, except it's really like depending on the device that you're on, to go click that number sometimes is very tricky. Like if you have fat fingers like me, it's you end up going to the wrong place or whatever.
Yeah, and especially if you're consuming on mobile, right?
Yeah. But it's very interesting. I mean, like I've dug into SEO, like I would say on a surface level, and I understand like link building and I understand why it's beneficial. But in terms of like my background is in advertising. So when I started my digital marketing work on Upwork as a freelancer, most of my clients just came to me for advertising because, well, that was the quickest and cheapest way to get traffic and build authority and sell stuff. Like basically that's what everybody wants. And SEO is kind of like this long, slow tortoise game where there's really no guarantee that anything is going to work because you need to optimize things like over and over and over and over again.
Yeah.
But it is possible, but it requires a lot of time investment. And for lawyers or doctors who are super busy, they'd rather just pay the money to Facebook and get the clients that they want today.
Right. Yeah. So absolutely, it can, like, advertising, like definitely, like for like I offered paid search as well as SEO, and like paid search we could get results much quicker, but in legal in particular, getting those clicks was very expensive for sure. So I think I read an article a few years back saying I think 6 of the top 8 most expensive keywords are in the legal industry, like mesothelioma or Houston personal injury or something like that, like terms that I was trying to bid on. You could spend hundreds of dollars for a single click. And that's where conversion rate optimization really was important. But yeah, like with SEO, it's like, all right, so this is going to be a longer term play, so we need to temper our expectations, and I have to, as if I'm the agency, I have to set realistic expectations, but also make the client understand that you're probably getting pitches from other marketers who are saying, like cold pitches from marketers saying they can get you top ranking on Google in 1 day or something like that. And you have to do a lot of education to let them know, like, listen, one, that's either a lie or it's a trap. The trap being that I could get you to rank number 1 for your name or something very long tail, very specific, like personal injury lawyer who wears suspenders and slacks and has a great haircut.
Which one is searching?
No one's searching for it, but I told you I'd get you to number 1 in Google, and I did, so pay me, kind of thing. And it's like, all right, well, and a lot of businesses have been burned by over promising, under delivering marketers. And so it's important that you can, if you're doing marketing for someone, like understand where they're coming from, understand that your client has probably been burned before, or at least knows other business owners who have been burned before. From I've heard, many people who are happy with their marketing agency don't share that information with their friends.
That's funny.
Yeah.
That's so funny. It's one of those chicken and egg type of situations, because
Yeah.
so since I started this sort of work 7 years ago, and back then it was just about being able to deliver what you said you're going to deliver. Whereas now it's, people have gone through a bit of a cycle. So they've worked with other people, or they've been burned before, like you said. And now it's a constant, like, they've got this barrier against marketers where it's like you have to be selling yourself and proving expectations all the time,
Right.
which is really difficult. Obviously, if you're good with what you do and there's consistency, which there invariably isn't ever, because SEO things change, rules change.
Yeah.
Facebook changes their rules with advertising.
Yeah.
There's so many things going on that it's one of those constant. Like, as a marketer, you have to be marketing and selling all the time. Like, this is just the role. This is the job that you're in. So let's get into Postaga.
Yeah.
Keep getting stuck on that word. You then launched this product on Product Hunt.
That's right.
So tell me a little bit about that, like working directly with clients and then now building this SaaS product, right?
Yeah, so kind of from the experience of running a marketing agency, after I had sold and left, my co-founder and I were like trying to talk about like what the next steps were, next projects and ideas and things we wanted to do. My co-founder was like thinking like, one problem that we had, a challenge that we had, was we want to do, SEO for our clients, and there are things that we can easily build in our processes for like content writing, for example, or on-page SEO, and we have our checklists and things like that. But a very big component is getting links, and content alone doesn't do that for us as well as it used to. So we need to, what we need to be doing is doing outreach to different blogs that can link to us, but also in a scalable way for our clients. And what we were seeing was there wasn't a lot of options out there. Other marketers that we spoke with had very disconnected systems. Like they'd either like use different research tools or hire VAs to do research for them to find relevant opportunities and websites and build spreadsheets and lists, and then go through those in either like have VAs manually prospect each of these websites to try and find the right person, and then find their email address, and then use software to validate those email addresses, and then throw all of that into a CRM, and then build these email templates and personalize them. And it was just it just didn't make sense for a business or to do it scalably that you could offer it to a client. So
you've just described my process right now.
It's a very common process.
Painful.
For sure.
Painful.
So we wanted to build, and maybe you should check out my software, because we wanted to build a way to streamline and automate the tedious parts. So we did that. And so basically kind of like what Postaga's platform and workflow is first you choose a goal with your campaign type. So like, for example, if I want to get my product reviewed, I want to find blogs that have reviewed my competitors and reviewed other apps and businesses in my industry. And we have a search engine that does that. And then after we retrieve those results, you can kind of choose which of them you want to reach out to. Then our platform will find the right contact people through an integration we have with LinkedIn. Then the next step is we find their email addresses and we validate them, because if your email bounces and if too many of them bounce, you're going to get your domain going to spam, and that's no good. And then we have the last step is kind of the CRM, where you choose an email sequence and your emails and follow-ups and personalizing them for your contacts. And that's the in essence what our platform does. And so we have different campaign types for like different goals, what you're looking for. So if you're looking to promote your blog content, we have ways to streamline the skyscraper technique, which is a very popular link building outreach technique. We also have ways to find other articles that link to that basically have like that link to tons of resources on a particular topic, so we could reach out to them, as well as a bunch of other things, from getting you reviews to getting your blogs articles linked to building your brand and getting you on podcasts and things like that. And and the last thing is also we have a way to do cold outreach for sales too.
Yeah, that was going to be the question, is like, can it do sales as well? Because yeah, what you just described is this whole painful process, exactly, almost to the T, hiring a VA and then not getting the right data. In fact, I just ran a whole bunch of contacts through Neverbounce yesterday and found that 30% of the emails that my VA gave me were garbage. And I was like, why are my emails not going through from Pipedrive? It was just so weird. And so I did this exercise and I was like, right, crappy emails.
Yeah, and the thing is, there are a lot of email finding apps out there, but for some reason, just a bunch of them, they don't automatically validate, because their deliverable is they give you email addresses, and if they were to cut out 30%, then they're giving you fewer results, and you're thinking, oh, maybe that's not so good. But like our platform like finds and validates, I think, around 90% of the emails for the contacts, which is like, you're like, all right, well, it's 90%, that's not 100%, but if we can find email addresses for and that work for 90% of the people, then I think that's a win. And so, all right, maybe you can't reach out to this website because we can't find an email address, but here are all the other websites. If you're doing this at scale and trying to reach out to as many people as possible, making sure that you can actually get to inboxes is a big thing.
Yeah. So thank you again for being on the podcast. Where can people find Postaga, and how can they get in touch with you if they have questions?
Yeah, so I'm pretty easy to find. I don't think there are any other Andy or Andrew Cabassos out there in the world. So, my website is postaga.com, postaga.com. You can also find me on Twitter at Andy Cabasso, on LinkedIn as Andrew Cabasso, and I also have a Facebook group on link building and outreach and digital marketing. It's called Grow Together SEO, and check us out there. It's a really nice, vibrant community where we share everything from like guest posting opportunities to answering questions that you might have about link building and outreach.
Cool. Well, Andy, thank you so much for being on the episode. I definitely learned a lot, and I hope the audience did too. That was awesome, man. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode with Andy. Andy was a very fascinating guest, and I wish him all the best. If you want to, all the links to Andy's social and also Postaga will be in the show notes below. If you enjoyed the episode, definitely hit the like button if you're watching this on YouTube. Subscribe to the channel. And if you're listening to this on Apple or any of your podcast providers, definitely subscribe or follow, depending on where you're listening to this. And this has been the Marketing Stack Podcast. I really appreciate you listening in, and I look forward to you on the next episode. Bye-bye for now.